Greetings, dear hearts. Welcome to this year's edition of the Global Wisdom Gathering, Dreaming the New Earth, on the theme, As of the stars, so of the earth, as above, so below. We'll be in conversation with keepers and guardians of the ancient truths and teachings about where we come from and where we are heading as a collective. Visionaries, medicine people, practitioners from a variety of backgrounds, offering us all a time for sacred learning. In this edition of Dreaming the New Earth, we zoom in on what our place is in the true cosmic origins and story of humanity, as well as our deep connection to our Earth home. What guidance and insight we can find in the starry realms and in our ancient history for this journey of awakening that we are on here on Gaia. I'm your host, Clara Nisiri, and in this session, it's my honor to be talking with Angell Deer. Welcome, Angell. It's really wonderful to have you as part of this conversation and this gathering of wisdom keepers. And thank you for the beautiful work that you do and that you share with the world.
Thank you, Clara. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And for those who are not familiar with Angell, Angell Deer is an ordained minister, mystic, medicine man, teacher, permaculturist, beekeeper, international speaker, author, and lover of all forms of life. He dedicates his life to learning and teaching ancient wisdom from the Andean cosmology and Norse shamanism. His work is inspired by the adventure of not knowing and by the mystery of spiritual living. Central to Angell's journey is Sacred Paths, which underlies all his spiritual endeavors, shamanic teachings, and transformative retreats. This serves as the meaning, the energy and vibration that guide his work. As an author, he's published The Sacred Web this year in 2024 and is preparing to release his second book, Becoming the Medicine, in 2025. Angell finds inspiration on the land of the Sanctuary, a shamanic healing center and part of Sacred Paths in Calico, New York. It's a haven for life, certified as bee safe, pollinator friendly, a wildlife refuge, and a monarch butterfly station. His skills include being a veterinarian, a medicine man, breathwork practitioner, a Reiki master, meditation teacher, and herbalist. He also founded the New York Bee Sanctuary to protect bees and pollinators. Angell has advised the United Nations Population Fund and spoken globally, earning titles like NYC Venture Fellow and Earth Rockstar at the Global Concert for Earth. His work embodies compassion for our shared humanity, weaving connections between darkness and light, between past and present, and between people and nature. Wonderful background, and today Angell will be sharing with us about ancient echoes, modern paths, navigating the journey of awakening on Gaia. So, beautiful topic title, and yeah, I would love to hear more about your work, The Sacred Paths, and we'll get to that. And to kick off the conversation, in your experience, we've also heard in your bio about your teachings in the Andean cosmology and Norse shamanism. How do these teachings guide us in reconnecting with our ancient roots, while at the same time navigating, the modern challenges that we face in these times?
Well, in the core of ancient cosmologies, at least the one I've studied, but from what I understand, most cosmologies, there is this concept that time is a cycle, a circle. Time is not linear. So as Western people, when we are trying to manifest a new future, we see that as something that never happened. Something that's unknown, right? We're on this straight line going into the future. When you look at it from ancient perspective, from more indigenous perspective, time being a circle, the future is the past. And what we mean by that is that if we study the past, if we study our origins, if we study how civilizations rise and peak and fall and died, like nature does with the beautiful cycles of nature. We can understand better maybe what's at play today in our world and be present with more trust, with more heart, and with more guidance. And I think, what is happening is a process of death right now, death of many aspects of our civilization. And that's something that's very uncomfortable for the Western scientific view, that somehow we are in constant progress. We don't want to die. We don't even want to age in our culture. And everything that is new is what somehow has the most value. Either it's a new invention, it's the latest phone, it's the latest technology, it's the latest highest speed on the internet. So it's all about newness. And, if you just sit with that, there's a problem here because we are giving the highest value to things that we don't know yet, that have never happened before, that have not proven over time that they really work. If you flip the script and you look at this from an ancient wisdom perspective, when you want to find wisdom, you go to the elders, you go to the mountain, you go to beings, either humans or non-humans, that have been here for a very long period of time. Often that were even there before there was even what we call humans on Earth, and listen to their stories, listen to what they have to say. And native tradition, ancient tradition carry prophecies. There are stories that unfold over hundreds, if not thousands of years, that tell us about things that happens to humanity when humanity drift off its sacredness, its connection to each other, its connection to nature. This happened before. Yes, the world looked different at the time, but as humans, we're still very much, kind of an evolved primate. We have evolved over tens of thousands of years. And in fact, most of our reaction, even to what is happening, is in our back brain, in our reptilian brain, in the ancient brain. And that make us react to what is happening in the same way we would probably react to a tiger running into our cave when we were living in a cave. And so once we understand that, we understand, okay, what are the drivers of humans' impulse? How do we react to danger? How do we face uncertainty? And how do we gather again? How do we return to the collective? How do we return to the family? How do we return to the fire, to the prayer? Those stories become very relevant. And, that is why in ancient cultures, elders are so revered. That is why people go to pray to big mountain. I'm just back from Peru, and we did a pilgrimage in one of the highest mountain in the Andes. People have been going there for thousands of years, not just because of belief, but because of experiencing over time such healing and wisdom, that they have recognized those places as places of wisdom, places of grounded, places that give us direction. So we have an opportunity to either, double down on what we believe is true and seems to not be working. I don't want to put final statements, but it seems that yes, we have a lot of modernity, and yes, we live longer, but how well do we live? And how is that really working? Not just for us, not just for privileged people, not just for white people, not just for the Western people, but for the whole humanity. And right now, every study tells us that it doesn't work. It doesn't work from an environmental level, from a social level, from a political level, and for just a well-being level, right? If you just look at the amount of antidepressant or alcohol that is consumed in the Western world, the rate of suicide that is getting towards younger and younger population. There's a lot of suicide of young kids now that we didn't have in the same proportion, 50 years ago. Everything is telling us it seems that the way we are living is not fostering happy human beings and is not fostering health and wellness as we think it does. So my feeling, my experience is that there are solutions, at least pointers. We might have to invent a new world that has never existed before, but at least there are pointers on how to do that, how to reconnect, to live in a world that might look very different than what we are seeing right now.
Hmm. Yeah, well, such important points you've made. I love that you've brought in the reverence to the elders and the ancient, not the non-human or the more than human and human. Just reminded me of a beautiful message I received recently in a journey, or a reminder rather, to cherish our elders, to sit in conversation with them, and really, even those that we have in our circles who perhaps don't even remember who they truly are, or they've forgotten their true essence, but just sit with them and really see them as where we come from, with regard to our own parents, or our grandparents. We are the result of all of these elders, aren't we? And we are their dream. This is something that we tend to forget, and we carry so much of them. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and these things about modernity and the discomfort that sometimes we feel, but we just suppress, and so many people still are in that the business as usual when everything around is just completely changing. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for bringing those points to the conversation. And as we were saying in your bio, we spoke of sacred paths, which serves as the foundation for your spiritual work. Tell us more about this, and how does it help individuals integrate the cosmic and earthly wisdom into their personal journeys?
Yeah, from an ancient perspective, the idea of traveling and journeying, doing ceremony towards other world is very present, is very important. And that kind of weave into what we were talking about, where you were sharing that maybe the wisdom that we get just from the humans is not very clear, or is tinted with systems and egos and pain that is unhealed. And so it's not always uh, unconditionally loving and caring. And it's also not always giving us a path forward that is obvious. So the idea of sacred path is, how do we travel to other realms? How do we connect to other beings that are non-humans? Some can be, earth being, and some may be in the stars and beyond, in order to gather wisdom from that perspective, but then bring it back on earth in this incarnation, in this reality. My teacher in Peru he not only teach ancient cosmology and is a guardian of sacred sites, but primarily he's a farmer. He grow corn, he grow quinoa, he has bees, he make essential oil. So he's deeply connected to the land. He's deeply connected to the land because that's where the connection to his ancestors is. And in Peru, the seed tradition and the god seed of corn is really important in that tradition. And years ago, many years ago, when I wanted to learn from him and I really wanted him to be my teacher, he didn't want to be a teacher. He didn't want to take that responsibility. And at some point, he said, "Well, I'm going to give you some corn that we've been growing for thousands of years, and I want you to plant it, to grow it, to harvest it, And when you harvest it, you have your own seed, you plant those seeds. And when those seeds are growing, you'll call me and I might start teaching you. So it was, a year and a half, 2 year process for me to just sitting with the seed and planting and growing them. What he was trying to teach me there is that the biggest wisdom we're going to get is in direct connection to the earth, is in understanding that vibration, understanding the wisdom that a seed carry. What is a seed, from a philosophical and spiritual level, not just from a physical level. And all the wisdom keepers, at least the one I work with, they are extremely connected to land. They are not traveling to other realities to escape this reality. They are traveling there to gather seeds of wisdom and plant them back into the earth. And that follow the medicine wheel from the, and then cosmology perspective, where you have the three world, like in many cosmology, but the third world, which is called Hanan Pacha, which is the upper world, which is the condor perspective and the higher view. The condor is not looking at the stars. The condor is looking down on the earth. It's already telling us where to look, where this is going. So we travel and we experience, other realities, altered set of consciousness through prayers, through ceremonies. Our perspective is shifted, and we use that shift in perspective to look back on our communities, on ourselves, on our families, on our countries, on the world. And then we come back, we land on the earth, and we do the work there. What's called integration. Very often, that's a very reducing word, but that's what it is about. So sacred path for me was this idea to remember that we are walking on the earth. I mean, my website is sacredpath.earth. It's on the earth. But yes, we are using, other dimensions and other realities in order to inform that. But what's primary, the most important, is to grow seeds, to connect to the earth, to be in connection to our family and our elders, to do things on the ground here. Because for now, we are two-legged. For now, we are here to work. We don't have wings, right? We're not born with wings. We're born with legs and hands. And so to really be grateful and fully accept this incarnation with all the troubles and the difficulty that we have to navigate it, there will be a time of transition. There will be time where we go to other forms, where right now we are called into the heart of what is happening on our planet. And that's really important to heal ourselves enough so we can attend to that. We don't run away from it. We don't escape it, because there's really no escape anyway. There's nowhere to go. Right.
I love that, weaving the cosmic and the earthly into the teachings that you share, and I feel it's key in this time that we understand our place on the earth, and of course also in the greater order of things as both cosmic and earthly beings, and what that means. And speaking of cosmic origins, as you know, this the theme of this event is connected to, what role do you see our cosmic origins play in shaping our collective vision for our future, the future of humanity on Earth?
Now, there are so many ways to answer this question. So I'm going to give you first an answer through the cosmology of the Andes. The cosmic origin of life in the Andes is deeply connected to the waters, to the sacred waters. In fact, the waters are called cosmic water, not water. And the reason is that, we know it through science, but the elders in the Andes have been knowing that for thousands of years without any science, or at least not modern science, a different kind of science, that the waters, they came from space. All the waters that are on the earth today, they were not made on earth, or they just appeared. They fell on the earth. They were coming from somewhere else. And so they carried a vibration and information as they arrived to seed the earth and to bring life. on Earth. We are the blue planet, right? When we're far away, this is mainly a water planet, as is our bodies, in the same proportion. It's interesting, right? We're born from this water planet as a water being. We look very dense, but we're not really. We're mainly water. So the story of our origins and the connection to our ancient origins is deeply connected to our capacity to connect to the sacred waters, to keep the water flowing, to keep the water happy, as we often say over there, to keep that vibration renewed. And the water, they still remember that origin. What do the water do? Water is the only element that is not non-local. It's not in one world, it's in the three world. Water there on the ground, and then the sun is there, the water rise, they go to the middle world, they go out of the earth, they move, they go to the upper world, they get the counter view. They get a vibration up there, an activation. They receive information through the cloud and the cosmic rays and many other beings that are up there. And then they fall back. And then they return and they fall on the earth and nourish the earth. For anyone that has animal on their land, I have chickens and cats and dogs and I used to have horses and other animal. If you give a choice to any animal to drink between a pot of water that you get from the tap to waters that came from the rain, they are always going to choose the rainwater. And I don't know if you ever saw that, but if you look in the field where there's cows and there's just been raining, the cows are drinking what's on the ground. They're not drinking in their water bucket. Why is that? Because they know the vibration is different. The water has a quality. And that's what informs our bodies, right? What have we done with our waters? We trapped our water. We put in dam on rivers. We put in water in pipes, in bottles. We have tried to restrict the freedom of the waters in the same way that we don't have good tools and skills on moving our own waters, our grief, because we need to move a lot of our grief right now with what's happening in the world, and for now decades, we don't move our grief. For Western humanity doesn't really have rights to move that grief. So you can see a parallel in the way we treat our own sacred waters and the water of the world. And if from that cosmology perspective, you understand that the waters need to circulate, the other one bringing that information, you can understand why we have disconnected from those ancient origins, from this activation. There are beautiful study on the memory of water, that every thought, everything you think, just shape the water. And if you've done those experiences, I've worked a lot with water, and it's just fascinating that just me thinking something, looking at a glass of water, and then you put that glass of water under a microscope, and the shapes of the molecules is changed. Just this vibration. So now think reversed. Think of water coming with information, with a good vibration, with information. If I'm not able to receive that, or if I receive it in a container that's not well, I'm not going to be able to connect to that. And ceremonies, rituals, and many things allow us to reconnect to those ancient origins. The Milky Way in the Sacred Valley in the Andes is called the Sky River. Right? So there's a deep connection between the stars and the waters. In fact, the river there, the Wilcamanca River, which is going to become the Amazon at some point, so the Sacred Valley River, at some point in the calendar, align with the Milky Way. And this is very sacred time because it's a time where you can put prayers in the waters, in the rivers, put offerings, and those waters are going to go down, touch the Milky Way, go back in the sky, and that's going to be heard by the ancestors. That's the reason people do that. And then the waters are going to come back with that prayer, with that answer. So we cannot really, from this cosmology perspective, separate connecting to ancestors, our ancient origins, and separate that from the sacred waters, the cosmic waters, and the stars. This is all part of one system that is keeping the information moving between this plane and the cosmic planes.
Hmm. Wow. Um, yeah, so many things that just came up as I
Yeah,
was
this is a very
listening.
short version of a very long teaching that can take a few years,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah, I understand. Thank you for sharing that. Would you share a little bit about your personal journey with connecting with your cosmic origins? Is that something that you're open to sharing?
yes, well, like many people, I guess, as you go more deeply into that path and you find your spiritual allies, animals and beings that are, somehow present for this life to help you in your medicine, in your service, um, in your healing. Uh, a lot of those teachers, so I work a lot with the deer medicine and with the oak tree medicine. That's my two big allies that I work a lot with. And I've had ceremonies and rituals where I went really deep into these deer lineages. There are deer people, the Hopi people, and other tribes in the world that really venerate the deers. And um, when we start studying, and I've been working with the deer for a decade now. At some point, those antlers they open pathways into the stars and connection to other landscape, to other origins, and really what we call the deer or any forms and shapes on Earth that is visualized in nature is coming from a vibration that is somewhere else, and it has an origin. You can see it as a planet or a star system that is the unique origin vibration of that medicine, and that somehow translate into animals and plants into our planet. So for me, the deer medicine has helped me to go back into very ancient origins of what this soul might be about. Also showing me different versions of what deer medicine means, not just on Earth, but on other realms, and why it's translated that way on Earth, why it looks that way, why a deer looks that way on Earth, right? It could look very different. So even in the shape of the animal, in the same way that shape of plants can tell you what they can heal, in the shape of the animal, you can find a lot of deep teaching there. And that has helped me, first to, do my own exploration, but mainly, I think it's always important to work with elders and teachers that are, thousands of years of knowledge in their cosmology and their tradition, to talk to them and to refine and to really understand and to confirm what I was seeing as something that is real, and that there are teaching or stories about that in certain tribes in North America or South America. So for me, that's been, and it's still an ongoing process. Obviously, this is never ending. Um, but because I carry this as my last name, it's on my ID. It's a name I wanted to understand better. Okay, what does it mean to be part of that family? And I remember years ago the deer coming in ceremony to me and say, "Well, that's great, you have the name, but you need to learn how to walk like deers. You need to understand what this medicine is about, because in some ways you're an envoy now, and you're using our name or using this name, to present yourself. And so, what does that mean?" And I think for now so many years, they just keep coming in all my ceremony, giving me pieces of teachings, and it's all coming from star beings, from ancient origins, from other um, systems that are, way further away than the sun.
Hmm. Wow, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And that's a great way to go into the next question, which is our connection. You often speak about the connection between humans and nature. How can this connection be strengthened to foster a deeper understanding of our place in the universe?
Mm. Yeah, nature is often, used as a tool for our own healing, and nature also has been romanticized a lot. uh, If you ever do wilderness quest, you understand that nature doesn't really care about you. You're just one thing there, and you can die easily in nature, some landscape, and we're part of a system where we're not on top really. We're not really a strong animal to start with. We don't have big claws or big teeth. We don't have venoms. We don't have a shell. So I think that's probably one of the reasons, I often think of that, why humans have disconnected so much from nature, because I think we're not just that strong in nature. I mean, we have a big brain, and obviously we've terraformed the earth and we change it a lot, and we can do a lot of things, but on a physical reality, we're not very good at survival in nature. And I think, we try to protect ourselves from nature from a long time ago. And that disconnection started not just because of capitalism of the Western world. I think humans always have, this tension with it because we're not the big animal out there. And so we kill the big ones, right? We kill the one that were dangerous for us. And what's left is the kind of the one that we can have power over. So we kind of created that place, but it's not really our place. We created a story here. We created a narrative around it. But I think the most important, and that's often what's missing in many spiritual practices, at least the modern one, the Western one, is that there is no reciprocity with nature. So, okay, I need wisdom. I'm going to go in a forest, talk to a tree. I need to feel better because I have anxiety. I'm going to sit along a river and put some prayers, right? So we really go with our needs. But I think, one of the concepts in Andean cosmology is sacred reciprocity. It's called Ayni, Ayni. It means like everything needs to be reciprocated. And in that aspect, there's also the one teaching, which is before taking anything, you give first. So you have a gift, you give something, you do something, and then you're going to receive. Because we don't live from a place of fear and scarcity, we live from a place of love and abundance. So everything is coming. There's really no begging needed to get teachings, to get healing. But what's really missing is our giving. It's how do we go to nature and how do we do that? And people often think, well, I just put some tobacco and I put a prayer and that. But from, the lineage I study and I come from, no, you go clean that river first before doing a prayer to the river. You just spend a few days to just cleaning and picking up trash. You plant trees, you restore ecosystem. You do work for, I don't know, insect, bees, whatever it is calling you. You cultivate the land. That's the first connection. Because then you understand that those 6 months of work, weeding, seeding, cultivating, paying attention, and then you get a fruit, or you get a seed, or you get, something out of it. This is all the energy you've given, the time, the attention, and that's what you're eating. You're eating what you've given. But the way we're eating today, someone else given that energy, that time, that space. So we don't really understand reciprocity as it is understood in traditional culture. And we don't practice it because of that. We don't really understand how it is. So this connection to nature, it is not just me having a tree that I can talk to or knowing what my animal is and being connection to the spirit aspect of nature, the aliveness. But it is more about the direct connection and then what do I do for nature, especially in a world where nature has less and less space, right? Where the wild is more and more restrained, where we burn a lot of forests. So I think the first step, that's why my teacher asked me to plant those seeds. And that's why, with my students, we often say, start by things like that. We're going to grow things first. Because then when you do that, something much bigger open back towards you. There's a gift that you receive that you cannot get just by doing ceremonies and prayers. My teacher often says, stop praying for the earth. This is irrelevant. Clean it. Plant trees, plant food, right? Do things like that. This is your prayer. This is the real prayer. The sitting and I love Mother Earth and I want to protect her, he says that has no effect. And he's very strict on that. And it's a very indigenous perspective because indigenous cultures were deeply connected to their land. So that was always there. But somehow we took the teaching out without the way of life, without understanding their cosmology, without understanding their true relation to nature. And then we think that is enough. And in fact, it's missing the foundation. It's like you're building a house, but you don't have a strong foundation. You don't have a basement. You're not anchored. And that's often what spirituality becomes with nature. It's not very anchored because there is not those roots. Those roots are not present. So for me, that's the most important. In fact, your biggest spiritual practice is when you garden or grow your food. And if you live in an apartment, you can still grow things. You can still plant one seed in one pot and sit with that for 6 months to really, and then she'll start talking to you and you'll get more message than traveling to Peru doing a big ceremony there. I promise you that, because there is that response. And that's how the universe works, in reciprocity, right? You give, you receive.
Yeah, I can only say that from my own experience at home, I can totally vouch for that journey, that you've just described of Aini, of sacred reciprocity with the earth. And it's such a rewarding and beautiful journey.
Mm.
Um, to bring it for a moment to the modalities that you work with in sacred paths, for example, I believe well, from the bio, we've heard that you are a breathwork practitioner and facilitator. Yeah, could you share a little bit about those modalities and how they help us reconnect, and deepen in our journey of healing, of remembering, and yeah, I suppose these deep experiences with nature and our own true nature, our essence.
Mm. Well, I'm a firm believer that we are born with all the medicine we need to heal ourselves. Like we don't really need to, you know, it's funny because I organize, retreats in Peru, but I always tell people you don't need to go to Peru really, you know, and you have your breath. And the breath, I think, is one of those powerful modality, if you ever done, an hour of breath work, how powerful it can be, transformative. It's this modality, the breath is the third world, it's Hanan Pachais, the wind, the top of the mountain. And it allows to get to that other perspective with the self, to bridge the conscious with the subconscious, to access territories inside ourselves, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, that are not accessible to a normal state of consciousness, as we call them. I don't know if they're normal, but let's say what we call normal state of consciousness. So breath is a bridge, it's a portal, it's an altered state of consciousness, like when we dream, and it gives us this opportunity to do deep work of healing. I love that practice. The first time I did it, I think 10 years ago, before I became a practitioner, I was blown away because I've been working with plant medicine for the 10 years before, and I thought that was it. And here I discovered that modality that gives me the same depth of experience with just my breath. So for me, that's a really big one. But I think also, and that's where my path is going to. I think in the spiritual world, there's a lot of focus on what we call the very loud plant, the entheogenic plant, or the psychedelic medicines, because you cannot avoid, seeing and feeling, but they are loud. That's what they are. There are plants that are going to scream at you, and so you for sure are going to hear a message. And it's because also we are living in a world that's very loud. We're saturated by information, and it's very hard to quiet the mind, and we're just bombarded, right? But I believe we need to go more towards the one that whisper, the plants that have maybe a voice that is maybe a little bit harder to hear, but it's as meaningful and as deep as the other one. And for me, that's been my experience working with plant dieta, with local trees from my land, the oak tree, the maple tree, the apple tree, and doing, plant dietas, which are a month's extended period of time where you drink that tea of the bark of the tree and you eat that apple, but in a ceremonial way. And you do that for, you sleep with it, you put it on your altar, you have a piece in your pocket, you work with every aspect of the plant. And within a few days or weeks, that communication opened. And I can tell you the first time the oak tree dieta, the first oak tree dieta I did, I literally wrote a whole book within 3 days. It was literally flowing down me. Uh, that journal is just the oak tree medicine. And I didn't research about oak tree first. I didn't want to know what this medicine was about. But then I went online and I realized, oh, this is what wizard in northern England that work with the oak tree, the medicine men there, that's what they were saying about the oak tree, the same teaching that I received. So I'm very interested in that. We work a lot with plant dieta. We offer four plant dieta a year for people, online to do that, because I think we need to reconnect first to our lands and to what grows there. We go to Peru and or India or other places, and we see those amazing trees we've never seen before and really amazed by it. But we pass by on our driveways, on our parking lot, in our cities, by trees that have been called invisible, that we often can't even name. We don't even know what they are. But they are as ancient as the trees you find in the rainforest. So they carry as much wisdom. And I think if we don't reconnect to the local trees, if we don't reconnect to the local fauna and flora in general, and understand that this is the way our ancestors did. They didn't take planes, they didn't travel across continents most of the time. They just work with their local medicine and they had everything there. Then I think we'll get a different kind of connection and love for those lands. And we probably want to preserve it better, want to, kind of honor it better. And I think that's really important in that process too, of reclaiming our medicine, reclaiming our ancestries. I worked with, that's the last example I'll give, with a Mediterranean pine tree as part of my ancestry. And it was extraordinary. Within a day, he started talking to me. He was much stronger and faster. Why? Because my ancestors for thousands of years lived amongst those trees. And so indeed, we speak the same language. Indeed, something is activated, speaking of ancient memories, in me when I work with an essence that my ancestors used to work with, right? So that's, I think, really, really important. And that's often the missing piece in many people healing. They're looking for healing in modalities that are maybe not in their ancestry. And then you open that healing modality and something really big happen in terms of reconnecting to their land, their ancestors, their traditions, their real old medicine that they carry.
As an author and a spiritual guide that you are, what key insights could you share that you believe are essential for those seeking to awaken to their true potential and doing this in harmony with Gaia?
Well, first, I think you need to be very disciplined about that recovery, that return, that remembering, because we live in a world that is very disciplined for you not to reconnect to that. And you need to be very conscious of that. And it's not a conspiracy theory or saying there is evil out there. It's just that the world has a certain prayer and vibration that's going in a direction that is different than what you're asking about. So it means that, yeah, if I only do that once a week for 30 minutes, then there is, 24 hours times 7. What is that? 160 hours a week where you're not doing it. So 160 hours compared to 30 minutes, is that going to be enough to remember and reclaim that? Probably not. So I think one of the key things in that path, and that's often why people struggle on it, is that it requires to make space and to be really disciplined around it. And then I think it's really important to make sure you turn towards true wisdom keeper. I'm talking elders. I'm talking people that have been living in these traditions for thousands of years. So you get authentic teachings. There's a lot of teachings out there that when you start diving a little bit into it are not really ancestral. They're labeled that way, but they've lost connection and touch with their people. And they don't have the vibration They look like it, but I compare it to Disneyland, right? You go to Disneyland and there's this beautiful castle and forest, but they're not real. It's plastic or it's concrete, right? It looks like it. It feels really nice, but it's not the real dream. It's not the real prayer. So I think it's really important as you do that exploration that you make sure you connect to people that are connected to those lineages, whatever lineage is calling you. So you get a more clean and clear teaching, because then you'll avoid falling in all of the traps of Western spirituality that seems to be even growing at the moment. And the third thing, I think it's really, really important to be really kind and compassionate with yourself, because you've been taught something so different for so long. You're going to feel probably lost a little bit at the beginning or along the way or again and again. So making sure that you don't add more violence to the violent that was done to you by not having elders, by not having rituals, by not having a rite of passage. There's a lot of grief of not being born in a system that fostered and supported our spiritual being, our spiritual reality. We are not just a machine, right? And there's a lot of grief in that, in realizing that. And that grief, that when you come to that realization that maybe you don't have that, you don't have that support system, maybe you don't live in a place where you can grow your food, maybe you don't have even, you don't know where to start for elders, to feel that grief, to experience that disconnect, in order to then be very clear about what you want. Because if you don't process the grief, it's just going to be rage and anger. That's what happens when you don't process your grief. Okay? So you want to make sure you take time to realize that. And as you walk this path, I always say, the biggest advice I can give someone on the healing path is just to be kinder with themselves. You're already kind, be kinder. You're kinder, be kinder. Because we need softness. The world is very hard, and our nervous systems, is very activated. It's very easy to react. Let's make sure this doesn't create more of it towards ourselves, the inner critic and the shame and the blame. We're learning together. We're trying to figure it out together. By the way, the ancient cosmology don't give us the pathways. They don't say do this and do that. That's usually what happened. When this happened, this come next, this come next. But they're not giving us, if not, there'd be one book out there. Here's what you need to do. So we have to be really gentle with ourselves so we can be with each other, because we're trying to figure it out. And that's really what's happening right now. We think this is a solution. Someone said, no, this is a solution. But in fact, it's a whole different thing that needs to emerge. And that is going to require each of us to really be gentle with ourselves and with each other, and to be okay with really not knowing, not seeing clearly yet, but to be committed to the service of all the living beings on this planet, all humans, all non-humans, to be dedicated to whatever step we take that's going to create more connection and more harmony than the opposite. That's what we commit to, and we're going to fall, we're going to trip, right? But yeah, let's do it in a way that we're kind with each other, because everybody's trying to figure it out, believe it or not. Some people might not realize that's what they're doing, but that's really what's happening. They just lost the prayer completely, and they think that's the way. But what's happening behind in their soul? The soul is trying to emerge. The love is trying to emerge, and that might look like nothing like love. It might just look like pain. But we have to remind each other of that. That's really important to think.
Wow, goosebumps as you were sharing all of that. Thank you so much. Especially that piece of, the kindness and compassion for ourselves, and the grief of being born into this disconnection. And yeah, just on that note, to wrap up our conversation, Angell, this is something I like to ask all the speakers of this gathering. what is your wish or your personal prayer for the new earth that we are co-creating?
My personal wish is that, everything I create, everything I write, everything I share is in service of that birthing. I don't know what's going to be born, to be honest. I think it's a bit presumptuous, and that's the human psyche that wants to know, and that somehow we're in charge. That's the humans are going to birth it. Maybe it's not the humans that are going to birth it. Maybe it's going to be born by something else. Who knows? It's going to take time for sure. But also being aware, as we're talking about birthing, we talk about dying. Something needs to die. And I pray, for myself. And when I pray for myself, I pray for all my relatives, for you, for every human being, that we find the grace in the death process, because we have to grieve things that need to die. And some people are not realizing maybe that things they're very attached to need to die, and they are going to need to grieve even more, and they're probably not prepared, and they probably don't even have the tools. So yeah, being conscious that in all cycle of birth, there's first a death. And there's a lot of honoring in ancient tradition about death because of that, because that's a big deal. And it's very important that we do that collectively here. That we, that's my prayer for me and for everyone too. It's how do we learn to reconnect and love with what seems impossible to love right now and to connect with? I often don't know how to do that, but I think it's important that I put that prayer in my altar every morning. How do I love this that right now is creating disgust or hate? How do I return to love and spirit? I'm a baby here. I don't know. I'm lost. So to be, not to come with answers, but I think to come with better question probably. Uh, that allows us to keep the inquiry open.
Thank you so much, Angel. It's been great speaking with you today, and yeah, just so much resonance with what you've shared. I believe you have a gift for our audience. Would you like to share a little bit about what that is, and also how can people connect with you? How can we find out more about your work?
Yes. So I believe the gift is the morning practice. That's the one I shared with the audience. I think that's the one. I can't remember. We did that a while back. So
it's actually the Introduction to Shamanism PDF.
the Introduction to Shamanism. Yeah, sometime I give this one or give the other. So it's Introduction to Shamanism. So it's a little guide that explain the core concept of shamanism. That explain, where this tradition come from, the different origin, because even the name shamanism, there's a lot of controversy on that. Also give, some stories about some people that are Western people that fell into this and completely changed their life. So there's, it's a short book, but just to give a feel into the power of this ancient wisdom and in that form. And people can find me on Sacred Path. It's sacredpath.earth. And they can find all our offering there. And, they can find, my blog and books and different online courses. And we have a whole, school of shamanism where we teach this concept over many years. So people are interested, we have a cycle of teachings that start every January and September.
Fantastic. Again, it's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful wisdom.
Thank you, Clara.
And to all those who have tuned in today, deepest gratitude. Have a beautiful rest of your day.